I'm Sam Petroda. I'm basically a telecom engineer who studied physics in India, came to America in 1964, mainly because I saw that President Kennedy wanted to take man onto the moon. It sounded romantic, so I decided to come to America. Studied electrical engineering here, built businesses, and then decided to go back to India in early 80s to really build India's IT and telecom infrastructure. I had political will and support from Rajiv Gandhi, who essentially gave meaning to my life. He was the youngest prime minister with lots of energy, enthusiasm, and I saw we could change the landscape of India by connecting India. So I worked with him for about 10 years. Then Rajiv Gandhi died. I basically ran out of money, so I came back to US. And then once again, I went back to India for 10 years, working with Dr. Manmohan Singh as chairman of the Knowledge Commission, Innovation Council, and helped build information infrastructure and institutions for digital India. So I've been going back and forth. During Rajiv Gandhi's time, besides telecom, I worked on technology missions. I thought if you want to solve large public problems, you got to be in public sector. In business, you can make a lot of money. Then you can donate that money. That's one way of giving back. But I thought the best way to give back is not by being in the business of giving money, but really participate at grassroots level at the right time with the right opportunity to solve large public problems and help in the nation building process. See, I was once in Delhi because I wanted to take my parents to see Taj Mahal, and I decided to call my wife back in Chicago and couldn't make a phone call. A little bit of arrogance and a lot of ignorance said, I'm going to solve this problem. I had made money by selling a company in the US. It looked like a lot of money for someone who never had any money. So I said, enough about making money. I was convinced that IT and telecom will change the face of India. But I didn't know how to do it. So somebody said you should meet Mrs. Indira Gandhi, then Prime Minister of India. Luck would have it that she was generous enough to give me 1 hour to talk. I went to her house with a Kodak projector and 35mm slides in those days because there was no PowerPoint. And she had her entire cabinet. And my message was that the Western model of telecom development doesn't work in India. Western model focuses on telephone density. India should focus on accessibility. Western model focuses on urban areas for telecom. India should focus on connecting rural India. India should focus on indigenous development, local talent, rural exchange, local production, build from ground up. But the key was to build human capacity. She listened to me. She sort of nodded and said, good, basically gave her okay. And then Rajiv Gandhi, her son, who later became Prime Minister, essentially gave meaning to my life. That here is an opportunity to solve big public problems. So we set up a Center for Development of Telematics, public sector, government owned. But the idea was to train hundreds and thousands of people in telecom technology. Then we had 2 million telephones for 650 million people. Today, India is a country of billion connected people. We have over billion telephones. In addition, then we did not produce any software export business. Today, we do close to 200 billion a year, every year, year after year in software development and services. So I think IT and telecom has changed the face of India. Credit goes to government initiatives, policymakers, young talent in India, lots of entrepreneurs, and I think the right ecosystem. The key then was political will from the Prime Minister. I had a vision based on the work I had done in America and the fascination I had with the telecom and IT. I was young, energetic, and I was well connected in US in my 30s. I knew all the founders of Intel. When Intel was being formed, I was there. I had used Intel's 4-bit microprocessor, and I had seen the revolution from vacuum tube to transistor to integrated circuits to, semiconductor memories. I bought 16-bit on one chip for $16. Okay, so I have seen it all, mainly because I was lucky to be at the right place at right time, in the right age. So I could relate to the potential myself. It was not alien to me. And in my bones, I was convinced that this will transform India. Okay. And my idea was to really change the model completely and not do what Western world does, but use the same tools to solve local problems, which was unique. I was not asking them to import products. I was not asking them to collaborate with AT&T or Ericsson or Siemens or whichever company. I said, you got to do it yourself from scratch. And fortunately, I found in Rajiv Gandhi a listener, Prime Minister with open mind, willing to give me an opportunity to experiment, back me up. So I knew I had his full backing that if I fail, he'll be there with me. So I think on these kinds of projects, the most important thing is political will. If you don't have political will, these things cannot be done. I am convinced. Then comes domain expertise. You need a domain expert who can relate to larger canvas. And domain expert who is not just technical expert, domain expert who can communicate, convince, articulate, fight vested interest, deal with media, deal with import lobbies, and a man with courage, conviction, clarity. You need all of that in the domain expert. It's not about knowing your technology. It is about everything else that carries you through. Then I think the main problem was people assumed that telecom is only for elite, like you said. Telecom is only for rural, urban, and I'm trying to do exactly opposite. And a lot of people would come and say, look, you're crazy that you're trying to solve telecom problem when India needs water, agriculture, seed. And my answer to them was, I don't know anything about it. You find somebody else to solve that problem. I know telecom. I know how to do that, so let me do that. That doesn't mean telecom is the only important thing. But that's what I know how to do, so I can solve that. I can solve water problem. I don't know anything about it. Okay, but I do know the power of technology. I do know that the technology can be an entry point to bring about generational change. I'm convinced that technology has to be taken to the doorsteps of people. I was also convinced that world over, people like us were busy solving problems of the rich, who really didn't have problems to solve. As a result, problems of the poor didn't get the right kind of talent. And I felt here was an opportunity to help solve problems of the poor. We created what we called then STD PCOs. It was yellow telephone booth where you provide a telephone booth to a private person, could be handicapped, could be women, could be marginalized, could be little pawn shop, tea shop, where they could make their livelihood by managing that phone where people can go to make a phone call. Because it was not possible then for India to have increased telephone density. What we needed was access to telecom. I don't have to own telecom. I don't need a phone at home where I can make one call or two calls a day. But if I had a phone in the community where lots of people can come and make call when they need to, that would do a job, I thought. And that was the unique idea. Okay, it was access to telecom as opposed to telephone density, which made a difference. And in the process, we created close to 2 million jobs for livelihood for 2 million families. Okay, I tell you, there are so many interesting examples. I remember once there was a fellow in Bombay at the airport had a STD PCO, and he had lost both of his legs. Okay, so every time I will go to his telephone booth if I got a chance, and I'll hug him. And he said, "Sir, you made my life." He said, "I come here, I manage the telephone booth, I need 2 hands to just count my money and give people telephone." He said, "You have no idea what you did to my life." So there were lots of people who would come and say, "Look, when my mother died," one fellow said, "I had to send 21 family members in buses to 21 different villages to inform my relatives. 5 years later, my father died. I got on a STD PCO and made 21 phone calls." He said, "You have no idea what it means to me." So people figured out how to use these telephones in a very different way. People could make international calls. Okay, a guy from Bihar working in Mumbai could talk to his mom in village, and it was a revolution in a way. Automatically we connected millions of Indians to the world with very little investment. I think hyperconnectivity offers unique opportunity for us to redesign the world, to take humanity to the next level. My concern is that world over we are using hyperconnectivity to do the same things we have been doing. Little better, little faster, little cheaper. As opposed to saying, what can we do with hyperconnectivity that we have never done before? It's a tough question. When you ask that question, you automatically think of endless possibilities. I'll give you one simple example. Today in India, we have over maybe some 20 million court cases pending. Whatever number is now, I don't remember exactly what it is. It takes sometimes 15, 20 years to get justice. With hyperconnectivity, you can say, I will change the entire judiciary system so that justice would be provided in 12 months. You can do that. Okay, I don't need this Nadawali file in India anymore. Okay, I got to change my mindset. But today, we use hyperconnectivity for some video conferencing here and there, but the process remains exactly same. Okay, so I want to use hyperconnectivity to transform our education, health, industry, trade, financial services, and governance. See, all governance systems are designed with vertical silos. Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Finance. Hyperconnectivity requires completely different organizational architecture. It requires flat organization with networking. So in 40s, when we looked at technology missions, we realized that there are large public problems to be solved using technology as an entry point. So we created technology missions on drinking water, immunization, literacy, edible oil, telecom, and milk production. You won't believe, but we had 11 million people working on these 6 technology missions directly and indirectly. Unthinkable. The only way I could communicate to all of them was television. So every day we'll be on television. The idea was to use technology as an entry point to bring about generational change in all of these things. Take, for example, water. We said geohydrological surveys, satellite imagery, water testing labs, excess iron removal plant, excess fluoride, desalination, eradication of guinea worm, immunization, produce polio vaccine locally. Today we have no polio in India only because there was a mission on immunization. Same with literacy. Then literacy was 30%, now it is 80%. Okay, but these things take time. Telecom, milk production. We are the largest producer of milk in the world today. So the idea in technology mission was to really use technology to solve problems of the people, but use civil society, media, domain experts, all together to collaborate. And only through collaboration, co-creation, cooperation, you can solve these big problems. It has to be solved from bottom up and not top down. And those are the lessons we learned. I'm a great believer in young because I have benefited a lot in my life from the energy of the young, whether at CDOT, CDAC, which was Center for Development of Advanced Computing, or in technology missions. And later in Knowledge Commission, Innovation Council, young people have the energy and enthusiasm to be able to deliver. But you need young people who believe in certain values. If they believe in wrong values, you got a problem. A lot of young people are searching for values, so they get on wrong track. You don't build nations with temples and religion. You build nations with science and technology, with collaboration. You don't build nations with hate. So my sort of message to young people is build good self first. Self that is respectful, disciplined, rooted in values, ethics, believes in technology, future. Don't go back to past. Past is there. But look at future. What kind of a world do you want to build in? Then you become a change agent. You got to convince more people of your values, wisdom. And change is tough. People don't like change. Change agents are hated many times because you are rocking the boat. You are taking something away from somebody who is already established. Say, hey, I'm milking the system, who are you? Okay, but that's what you want. You are saying, look, I know you are milking the system, but I want others also to get a piece of the pie, because then you will be happy too. Okay. So I think change agents are what the world needs today. So when I wrote this book, at the end I talk about the fact that to redesign the world, we need change agents in very large quantity. It's an idea. All I can do is begin a new conversation. And I hope young people can join in this conversation to demand change. I think I'm basically focused on this book and see if I can spend next 3 to 5 years to take this idea of redesigning the world global. Sensitize people, leadership world over, young people, and say, hey, the one we have today is not sustainable. That doesn't benefit everybody. So that's one goal I have. Second, I still want to use technology for some interesting things in life. I'm looking at lots of things, whether it is technology for digital money, not cryptocurrency, something totally different. Technology for mobile voting, because democracy needs new technology. See, we are not using technology to enhance democracy. We are using technology to enhance businesses, productivity, efficiency, but not democracy. I want to empower every human being to decide on their destiny. I want this as a tool to empower people, not just for entertainment and watching games and playing TikToks and whatever that, not for that. I want this to empower me, to inform me, to allow me to participate in multiple things, allow me to question things I need to question. And that has not happened. So the power of hyperconnectivity lies today in empowering every human being. Education, health, politics, social science, environment, all of these issues are in your palm. How do you capitalize on it? That's the challenge I'm looking at, and I know my time is over. I'm 80 and I know there is limited stuff I can do, but as long as I'm capable of doing it, I want to keep doing it because that's joy in life.